Now that we have looked and discussed what cognitivism is, let us see what are the implications for teaching and learning based on this theory. Now, the implications for teaching and learning. When studying, reading, revising, problem solving, thinking, and writing are all enhanced by intentionally activating the schemata before, during, and after these activities. So, it is always advisable for the learner or for the teacher to help the learner to draw upon his memory, his learning capabilities, to help him to understand what he is studying, right? That is to look at studying as a very, in a more scientific manner. What are the things that can be done before teaching him that particular new thing so that he understands it, all right? Can we come up with a mind map, or can we discuss things associated with the new material? Can we show pictures of things that would help him to bring out, make him or her understand the material more? This activation makes the schemata more responsive and receptive to new and previously stored memories. All right. So the match or mismatch between what you have retrieved and what you are studying can change your schemata and eases the processes of elaboration and retrieval. Right. So on retrieving the learner's studying ways, studying methodologies, on bringing about his style of memorizing something, or using different ways of making the material more understandable, helps the learner to store that new information. All right, so it is very important that there is a match between what is going to be taught to what to how the teacher or the learner prepares himself for the new information. Now, preparing teaching material, right? The same principles apply as above, right? The teacher should ascertain what the students already know. Think about the purposes, the possible content before you read. Why am I reading this material? What is the purpose of reading this material? How does, what connection has this new material got to do with what has been taught in the previous week or the week before? All right. So the teacher has to think of all this so that the learner is more prepared for the new information. Neglect of this approach can lead you to spend too much time on reading, the must read more syndrome, and not enough time on structuring the materials, right? So sometimes very little time is given to the students preparing to read or to understand the new material, as in straight jumping into the new material. As soon as you go in, you can see some teachers, as soon as they go in, they just give out the handouts and say, okay, read, and then paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Nothing has been done before giving out that particular handout, that new material, to prepare the learner for to understand the material. So after teaching, spend a few minutes reviewing the teaching session and note the changes to be made. So it's always good for the teacher to review how the teaching went about and how the students respond and how they understood the material, and after that to note what are the changes that can be made so that the next lesson is more effective. In teaching, orienting the students and activating the schemata will improve their learning, as said earlier, to prepare the students orienting the students, preparing the students for the new material, activating their schemata to draw information from them that would help them to understand the material that they're going to read or they're going to learn. Given the limitations of sensory and working memory, do not talk too quickly but chunk the information provided into meaningful and relatively brief sentences. All right, so for the teacher, don't talk too quickly and try to put the information in chunks or as in topics, subtopics, so that the whole material is understood better. Don't have PowerPoints that are too overwhelming. Sometimes what has been put into the PowerPoint, the animation, the pictures, the sounds, the clips are so distracting that learning does not take place. They are so busy just watching the PowerPoint rather than listening and trying to understand the content. The use of analogies, metaphors, and similes will create new connections rapidly with existing schemata. What this means is basically lots and lots of examples. Yeah, lots and lots of examples, real life examples, examples that the learner can understand. Examples drawn from the classroom, drawn from outside, drawn from the student's life, will help them to make the connections between the new information and what they know. The use of frequent summaries, guiding statements, and cognitive maps can help students to change their schemata. So, to summarize, after you have taught, to summarize it, all right? Before you teach or tell something new, to give a thesis statement, a topic sentence, a guiding statement, cognitive maps, mind maps, that sort of helps the student to see the overall picture, helps learning. Personal narratives interwoven with concepts and findings can trigger the episodic memory and the semantic memory and thus aid the storing and retrieval of information. So sometimes telling a story that is based on experience, drawing upon stories, some popular story that is going on in real life, all this will help students to remember and learn better. Thus, storing, retrieving, and understanding can be improved by explaining aspects of disease in relation to a patient. This is just an example, right? So if you're teaching about a particular disease, all right, by explaining the disease in relation to a patient, the disease or the symptoms or what they need to know about the disease will be remembered better. All right. If you had problem with mechanics, telling what are the problems that you yourself had personally on dealing with this mechanics, or how you know of learners, students who had problems with the mechanics and how they went about, trying to solve these problems, would help. Describing how one changed one's views of a historical or literary interpretation. All right, you read a historical event, the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, and how it sort of changed your mind about the whole non-violent movement, or after reading a book, a literary interpretation, to read a novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, and how after reading the novel, what was your feelings like, how you felt about the protagonist in the novel. So all these personal narratives, personal stories, telling stories about people you know, about other learners and students, helps the learners to personalize the new information and thus remember it better and store it better. Small group teaching Learning through discussion helps students to alter their schemata. So give students lots and lots of opportunities to discuss. All right, put them in small groups and organize the discussion so that the students discuss among themselves, as this helps. All right, small group teaching leads students to reconstruct their conceptual basis. Of course, in some Malaysian classrooms, it is rather very difficult. If you go to a primary classroom, you may have 55 students, or you go into a lecture room in a university and you go inside, you might find that there are 100 students. But you can try and form groups, smaller groups, and give them opportunities to discuss on topics. So in universities, tertiary education, tutorials can come into play. In schools, after class discussions or other opportunities to make small groups discussions. Probing questions, reflective questions, and thought questions can all contribute to this process. So it is very important, right, that the teacher provides questions that makes the learners think, reflect, and think about the material that they are studying. Practical and professional work also helps in remembering what is learned, in storing what is learned, and in retrieving what is learned easily. All right, so laboratory field work is important. All right, the challenge in most professions is to integrate schemata based on experience and schemata based on theories and research findings. Sometimes it is difficult to teach a particular material and to find an opportunity to practice what is taught so that it matches the classroom learning situations. That is the difficulty. But somehow in certain subjects it is a little easier, especially science subjects, but in other subjects it is a little bit more challenging. These links are probably best developed simultaneously rather than by learning theory for a few years and then applying it to practice. So learning a particular information, a new information, paper based, and practicing it should go hand in hand. Not you study a material for 3 years and then after the 3 years you go and practice it. So this is of course practiced by the medical faculties, medical schools. Usually they study in the morning and for only maybe for a few months, paper based, and after that immediately there is lots and lots of clinical work for would-be doctors, would-be dentists, would-be pharmacists, and all that. There's a lot of clinical work that goes hand in hand with teaching. So this is what this means here. In language learning, regular distributed practice is important. Total immersion is effective provided it is followed by reinforcement. All right, to put a student who is learning a new language, to immerse him in that language completely is only effective if after that there is some follow-up work. You don't just immerse that student in that particular language activities and watching videos and doing handouts, everything completely in that language, and then just go on to the next unit. There should be always follow-up, feedback, reinforcement, and all that. Frequent and varied use of linguistic constructions ensure that the schemata are flexible and responsive to new situations. So if you're teaching a new particular sentence structure, a phrase, then there should be frequent use of that particular structure and varied use, maybe in different situations, so that the students are more responsive to the learning. Right? Create links between the known language and the unknown language. So try to link the new learning material to what has already been learned.